Welcome back, you filthy Exalts. So, I had someone ask me about mapping yesterday, and I've been hearing about like, ooh, how do you make currency from mapping, etc., etc. Like, I tend to always get a decent amount of currency, or I've got enough in the bank to, blow like 3x on a Farrell's fur and try and 6-link that. But yeah, normally on a normal night, in particular with this current character, which I'm running a Golemancer, which is also a Magic Find character, and I'll show you what I've got. So double Venter's Gamble, Bisco's Leash, a nice amount of quant, 17% quant, could be better. Rarity Find isn't too significant, but anyway, it's all really down to a couple of things when it comes to mapping. First of all, there's a mix between speed and efficiency in mapping, which is probably important to note. So a couple of things that increase your efficiency are things such as if we go to options and you've got your loot filters, for example. So like right now I always run soft because it's just the way that I run it. I should run probably less, but what you'll find is a lot of loot filters, in particular never syncs in relation to mapping. You want to run maybe more strict or really strict loot filters. What that means is the items that you see drop down on the ground are going to be reduced, and you're going to be less inclined to pick up crap and more inclined to pick up things that are more important, that are better, things like that. Now, the other thing as far as mapping goes, is down to how you've got your tabs set up. Now, I tend to just dump all my stuff in my tabs as I go. I'm not the most efficient person, but one of the things that you'll notice about a lot of the guys that stream for 10 to 15 hours a day, who don't work full-time, things like that, who essentially have more time to play the game, so they have a lot of currency. And I'm not saying that people who don't play the game as much as that don't have currency either, simply just by example. They normally have a dump tab. Now in my case I have a store tab because I'm like that, but normally what you would do is you would have one of these quad tabs and you would basically just bash the gear into it, run the next map, and then once you've done about 20 or 30 maps, you then price check everything. That also means that your map clear frequency is much higher, and it basically means your potential, it's like kicking a ball. So it's the principle of probabilities. So when you kick a soccer ball into a soccer net or at a soccer net, if you kick a ball 5 times at one net, your probability is going to be much less than if you're going to kick it 10 times at a net. Now, not accounting for skill factor, different things like that, curve on the ball, whatever. Essentially, the more you do something, the higher the probability you are of getting better results. And the same applies for Path of Exile mapping. So the more maps you're running, the more probability an Exalt Orb, for example, is going to drop for you. Now, there are other catalysts that improve that chance, which I'm going to also show you next. So, what I would normally do if I was mapping, and we're just taking a standard T16 promenade map. Now, the first thing you want to do is essentially, at this level, T16 at white, that's where you want to start. Now, when you actually elk a map, or if you whatever you want to do, as far as you might just want to use a transmute, or you might chance it depending on how many elks you've got, the first thing you should always do is chisel your maps. And the reason why, if you chisel a map after you elk it, it's going to be 1%. It's going to take 20 chisels to actually get it to 20%, right? So if you chisel it after you blew a map, then it's going to take double 4, 8, whatever that is. You're only going to get 2% per chisel at that stage. So when you do it at a white stage, you're going to get 5% per each chisel that you chisel onto your map, which means running any map is only ever going to cost you at 20% is only ever going to cost you 4 chisels if you do it in the right sequence. That's probably the first step to run with. The second thing, when you actually run a map, you actually want to, or when you elk the map, so you're gonna obviously, you're gonna do whatever. But the next thing is, a lot of people pick up sextants and they don't use them, and that's crazy. So you're gonna want to go to your map. You're gonna want to go, okay, here's your map. Now you're gonna want to sextant your map as well. So you're looking for things like monster packs. so that's good. Unique monsters drop corrupted items, so that could be potentially good. Unique bosses of corrupted maps drop an additional Val item, that could be good. Strong boxes are enraged, 500% increase, so we're getting decent rolls. 35 additional clusters of mysterious barrels, let's say. For the sake of just argument's sake, we're going to run that. Now, those modifiers are then going to also apply to your promenade map that falls into this area. So, as you can see, all those modifiers are going to add on top of your map as well. Now, the next thing is obviously you're going to elk the map. So you're going to bash an elk. Now, this isn't too bad, this roll. If you don't like this roll, you know, you could go to something like this. Now, this is affecting my resistances. Now, we're talking about the survivability versus the ability to actually efficiently do maps. So normally I avoid temporal chains and physical damage and elemental damage reflect maps, but it really depends on the build you're running at that stage. If you can sustain those maps, then more power to you. You should do it. Now, pardon me. The other thing to be mindful of is how you actually run the map. So, when you actually bash your map in, if you just bash it in like that, you're screwing yourself out of currency. Now, your default craft is going to get 8% increased quant. But what you're also missing out on are other things. So what I've also noticed other people didn't know were for actual getting additional quant on your maps, your sacrifice fragments, if you're not actually going to farm at Siri, use your sacrifice fragments. So they're going to give you 5%. So you can run one sacrifice fragment on your map. That's going to increase your quant on that map by 5% and increase the probability of drops by, you know, that 5% quant. So that's the next thing that you also need to do. So if I was going to bash a map in, I would bash it in like that. Now I'd also run Harbinger Scarabs. You know, you can run whatever Scarabs you want to run. You might run a Breach Scarab as well. Run a Breach Scarab. Try and maximize your use of your maps in this circumstance. So the other thing that you'll also want to do is if you've got Zana missions, so if you're going for craftables, so your additional crafts, if you're crafting, things like that, obviously Jund missions are really good and they're profitable. Now Zana missions are fantastic for getting things such as, you know, Forge of the Phoenix, you know, Lair of the Chimera, Pit of the Chimera, Lair of the Hydra, and Maze of the Minotaur maps, and also Elder Encounter maps too. So Elder Guardians too, which are going to give you fragments that will let you do, you know, Uber Elder, and then eventually Uber Elder. That's the benefit of Zana maps, especially doing Zana maps past about T14 to T16. You definitely want to always complete your Zana missions where you can possibly do them. Now, it's up to you. Running sulfites if you're delving. It's less important when you're looking at map currency running. So if I was going to run my map, I'd run my map like that. I won't run the map like that because I've got a few other things I want to talk about in this actual video. So that's pretty much the key tip to running maps, or at least the way that my tip to you. Now, normally if you run maps like that, you have a pretty good chance you're going to get consistent Exalt drops. Last night I had 2 Exalt drops. The day before I had an Exalt drop. You know, in a week, you're not going to get Exalts every 5 seconds. Delirium's a really good league though because it has a currency modifier on maps. So even if you don't get Exalts, you're going to get Chaos. At least 1 Chaos, normally I find with that. If you're running your maps like that, you've got a pretty damn good probability of getting an Exalt drop. And obviously if you're running a character with things like Ventus Gamble, and if you're running Bisco's Leash, and you know, I can run with T16. I can run a map at T16 with this sort of statistic on a minion build. Not every build can do that, but even if you do that on T10 maps, there's no reason why you, if you just follow the same sort of methodology, you can get Exalts to drop in T10 maps. Now, the obvious caveat here is corruption. So it really depends on if you want to risk those maps, if you've got a big enough map pool to handle that corrupting maps. In my case, I could probably handle corrupt. I can corrupt maps. So if I was to bash a corruption on this map, that's not necessarily a bad corruption, because while it might have a damage reflect modifier or something like that, I've found in the past they may or may not. You'll find out as soon as you run the map. Now, if you die or whatnot, then this is another conversation we would need to have around, you know, whether or not mapping for currency versus XP gain is your gameplay strategy. So if you're going for level 100, maybe corrupting maps is not a good idea. It's really up to you at that stage whether you want to take the risk. Now, key things to look for that make you currency. The first thing you should do when you log on every day is talk to Zana, because potentially she might be selling a Cortex map, and Cortex maps are an easy 6 Exalt. And if you're doing T16 maps and Zana missions, this is going to get refreshed more than often, and essentially you might make 6 Exalt without even getting into a map. That's one of my first tips around what to look for mapping. Another thing that, we'll just get into the what I like to call the trophy room. Another thing, which I actually kicked up XL for this one, is actually predicated around what you should be looking for as far as maps go. Now, I'm going to try and work this on my screen so that you can see. Actually, we'll just change our video. There we go. We'll change that to there so you can see what I'm looking at. Now, another thing, and I'll put a share link to this document. This is like a shortcut that I put together for things to look out for when you're actually doing mapping. If you're doing Zana missions in maps as well, definitely do the Zana missions, because there's a damn good chance that one of these maps are going to come up in the at T16 level, and if you can kill the Guardians, you can take the map fragments and you can make 30 to 36 chaos off just those map fragments if you don't want to do shaper runs. Now, if you have all the map fragments and you're selling in sets, you can probably sell them for even more. You might get something like 150 chaos out of selling in sets. For Shaper, because there are specific players who will simply do set runs on Shaper and farm Shaper. It really depends on what you want to do. If you have at a T16 level, or say T14, you get a T16 map drop, because map drops will drop a few tiers higher as you level up your Atlas. If you get things like the Pit of the Chimera map, the Lair, Forge of the Phoenix, things like that drop, and you can't run those maps, by all means, sell them if you can't run them. You're going to make at least 30 chaos off those maps. At league start, they normally sell at about 40 to 50 chaos, because everyone's looking to do their gearing and whatnot. So I definitely advocate, if you're newer and you're trying to understand mapping, look for these maps when you get up to T16, if you get up to T16. The other map to look out for, which I've sold 2 or 3 of these this league, has been Cortex maps. Cortex maps will get you about 6 to 6.5 Exalt, depending on market, and maybe even more depending on whether or not you want to risk a longer wait time, because people normally don't always sell from the top tier, or they sell out and the Path of Exile trade website doesn't update in time. Now, that's an easy 6 Exalt. Probably the easiest 6 Exalt you could make. I've sold about 3 of these this league, and they've been very not easy to find, but they haven't been uncommon to find. Altered Distant Memories are another one. Augmented Distant Memories, pretty much any of these where there's a chance where a really good circle ring will basically drop, or where there's flask, Bottled Faith, anything, because Cortex and all, there's a probability for Bottled Faith to drop. Now, it's up to you if you've got a character that can do Cortex. Bottled Faith is about 21 to 25 Exalt. So it's really the risk doing the map and waste 6 Exalt if you can't do it, or sell the map for 6 Exalt, or do the map if you can do it and potentially get 25 Exalt. It's really up to you how you want to basically minimize your risk. Another couple of maps to look out for is the Perendus Manor Chateau map. Coward's Trial T14 maps sell for 51 chaos, and they are not that uncommon to get. For Delirium, Diviner's Delirium Orbs are 31 chaos, and Skittering Delirium Orbs are 30 chaos. Now, if you don't want to run a lot of the Delirium content, or you would rather just get the currency straight up as opposed to wasting the currency on a map and not getting anything, then this is an option for you. The other thing you should be on the lookout for is divination cards. So obviously House of Mirrors is 32 Exalt. That's a crazy amount. Demons, Doctors, Fiends, the Nurse, these are all really good cards to get drops on. They are rare, but they do sell for a fair bit. And then obviously this list, which you'll see I'll link this in the description, this file, and you can pick up this Excel file and you can have a look and see, so you can keep track of this. This is sort of a little bit of a shortcut list. Jewels to look out for. I've actually had an Unnatural Instinct drop this league, and I made about 25 Exalt from that, and then I spent a lot of that on my previous builds. Emperor's Wit, Might, Cunning, Voices are really expensive. If you get a 3-socket Voices, that's about 120 Exalt right now. Or I've seen it go up to, it's a crazy amount. It could go up to 200, I don't know. It's a lot. So 2.4 Exalt, even that's distorted right now. It's way higher than that. Depends on what you're using. Inspired Learning, really easy one. That basically gives you the same sort of attributes as a hunter's headhunter, but it's only 1 Exalt. Red Dream, there's Blue Dream, there's Green Dream. They all sell for about 50 chaos. So that'll get you net you some more currency. And lastly, look out for prophecies, especially with Delirium. I'm actually pretty sure I fucked this one too and missed a few Queen sacrifices. But Fated Connections, that'll give you, I think that is automatic 6-link. So if you've got any armor, you get a Fated Connections instead of fusing it. That'll give you a 6-link when you hit a Jeweler's Orb on it. And that could also be, if you get one of those, if you get a decent piece of chest armor, then if you basically 6-link that, you can make 6 Exalt or 5 Exalt, something like that. So that's something to be on the lookout for. Trash to Treasure, surprisingly, is really expensive. It basically just converts any non-normal item to a unique item. So if you're actually running for Helm Enchants, and you want to chance it to a unique item, if you've got the right base type. So if you wanted an Abyssus with a certain modifier, like Cyclone or something like that, if you ran, was it an Eternal Burgeonet, and you ran Trash, and you activated Trash to Treasure on it, then essentially you would essentially chance that to an automatic Abyssus, essentially. So with the probability of maybe 2 or 3 other items. So that's one thing to look out for. Easy 10 Exalt. A Progeny Sound, I don't even know what that does. It's 2.2 Exalt. And there's an easy way to even get those. So if you were to just go into your, go up to Natali, and essentially just seek prophecies, and who knows, one of them might just appear in here. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, that's basically my quick guide to mapping and my quick guide to what you should look out for in making easy currency on maps or Exalts on maps. If you follow this, at basic, you'll have a heap of chaos. You'll be able to convert to Exalt. If you maximize your maps and juice, the term is juicing. If you juice your maps appropriately using, sacrifice fragments, making sure you're running scarabs, making sure that you're chiseling them before you actually before you craft anything on them when they're at the level of white level maps. You're going to maximize your use of chisels, you're going to maximize your use of Elks, and you're going to maximize your ability to make currency in maps. Anyway, if you like this sort of tip video, I know it's a little bit late in the league and we could have all used it earlier in the league to try and get our heads around mapping and what to do and what to make, how to make it efficient. Then yeah, if you like this video, like and sub. If you think I'm full of shit, then dislike this video, go crazy, and until next time, bye.